Fearscape Media Network, exploring the unknown, one podcast at a time.
From Fearscape Media, Peer Beyond the Veil is coming back for a new season this March. We're talking government-sponsored mind control, walking on the edge with DMT, wild occultism and deep parapsychology, along with our signature blend of extraterrestrialism, supernaturalism, and cryptid chasing. Bringing you a brand new roster of fascinating guests, each with their own stories and theories on the wild and the wonderful. Peer beyond the veil. Find us wherever there's darkness.
Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basements may contain graphic, violent, vulgar, or explicit content not suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Thank you for choosing Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basement. Welcome back, and if you're new, welcome to the show. My name's Anna.
I'm Lindsay, and this is Rosewood Manor.
It's hot today.
It's very hot.
My loft is hot.
My house is hot too.
But I don't want to turn on the air conditioner because it's going to be loud when I record, so
yeah,
can't win for losing. It is what it is.
The sacrifices we make for you guys, listeners.
Well, and like right by my built-in where my desk sits is a huge window, so it's
all that sunlight,
all the heat
is beating right in.
Yep. What have you been up to lately?
Oh,
Get your floors done?
We did. We have like a couple of little things that need done, like transition pieces to the different floorings and stuff like that. But minor things, we have our baseboards all back on, and like it all around just looks great. Now it's just trying to get everything.
It's always that last stretch of like a drive or a project that makes you just want to pull your hair out because you know you're so close to being done, and it feels like it's near the end.
Right, because like with the transition pieces, we finally got the last part where you're missing, but like leading up to that, it's like now we have to get our house not a construction zone, and for the most part, like it's better. But it's still not that normal cleanliness it should be, if that makes sense. Because it got so put off while you did other things. But the floors look great.
You destroyed your entire house to make it pretty.
Quite literally.
You had to move furniture and everything to different places.
Rip up tiles, rip up carpet, rip up the thin set underneath of the tiles, rip up the carpet tack strips. It was a whole big thing. But we had family members and friends help us out. And so like it went a lot better than it could have.
Nice. I have painted almost all of my office. I have a wall left to do. Yeah. Whenever I get it. Wall? Yeah, it's going to be a darker shade of purple. And when I get it all like set up and put together, I'll put pictures on Instagram and Facebook. But
that's so exciting.
Finding the time to get it done. I'll probably do it on Mother's Day because, you know. That's apparently this weekend that we're recording.
I just realized that earlier. I have no plans.
I have no plan. I mean, I'm probably going to paint the rest of my office. To be
my husband works all the time. Like he's a very hard worker. But his schedule, he doesn't get like weekends off. He gets random days off. And so I don't know what we'll end up doing. I really don't care if that makes sense.
It's one of those things like, we're the moms, so we should care probably more, but I literally like.
But our children are also younger.
Yeah.
It'd be different if they were late teens, adult, stuff like that. Because they kind of understand a little bit more.
Well, they would
and
have
are
their own
able
money to buy
things.
presents and go to the
Exactly.
store by themselves instead
They
of
can
me
actually do
taking
things.
them.
But we have young children, so it's just kind of like, could you maybe just not scream at me constantly? And that would be the best gift you could give.
Perhaps my son will watch a movie that does not require me explaining life to him, like when we tried to watch Star Wars last night.
That's so funny. My kids do the same thing, and they were raised on Star Wars. And I'm just like,
He found it
pay
on
attention.
Disney Plus, and I was like, "Do you know how long it's been since I've watched episode 1?" And he goes,
What a great week to
No.
start Star Wars, though, because May the 4th be
Yeah.
with you, Revenge of the 5th.
"Yeah," and I was like, I don't remember everything about Star Wars, Landon. And he goes, "Well, whose fault is that?" Clearly, it's my
There's
brain.
so much in Star Wars, though. But I saw a new meme in regards to Star Wars Day, because I've always heard May the 4th be with you and Revenge of the 5th. But there's a new one, which I love because I absolutely love The Mandalorian, is This is the May.
Oh, nice.
Because in the show it says this is the way.
Yeah, I like know stuff. Sorry about my phone ringing. I swear I put it on silent, but apparently my watch has other plans. But yeah, like Star Wars, I haven't seen it in so long. And so I told Lynn, I was like, if you want to break down Star Wars, you're just gonna have to call Lindsay. And he was like,
I love it.
He was like, why? I was like, she knows a lot about Star Wars. He goes, well, I could just watch all of it. And I was like, good luck. I was like, it's gonna take you forever because you only have a small amount of time after school. And
Like
he goes,
nine just trilogy movies.
yeah,
And
I
all
was
the
like,
other side movies and TV shows.
like
and
there's a lot to start because like we spent forever on Disney Plus just trying to figure out where episode 1 was. Well, because like I figure he's not going to care anything about the old people.
Right.
He's not. But
My kids have a hard time
Anakin,
getting into the originals.
if you start out with Anakin, it's a little kid close to his age in theory. I don't know how old Anakin's supposed to be in
I think
those
he's supposed to be
movies.
like 9 or something. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I've watched it.
Close to his age might be more relatable.
Right.
He thought Jar Jar Binks was
Darth Vader.
Yeah, he thought Jar Jar Binks was weird. And I was like, yeah, you and everybody else.
Right.
And then he was like, where's Darth Vader? I was like, he's not in this movie. He goes, oh, come on. That's Star Wars. I go, yeah, I know that's not this movie. There's a lot of movies, Landon. He goes, well, where's R2D2? I was like, how the hell do you know so much about Star Wars? We've never even watched it. He goes, I know things. I have YouTube. Okay.
R2D2 isn't the original, though.
I know, but
R2D2's seen some shit, man.
In my head, I'm like, I've never told him about Star Wars aside from the other day when I grabbed him and I was like, May the 4th be with you. And he goes, what's your problem? And I told him it was Star Wars Day. And he goes, I don't know what that is. And so I guess ever since I mentioned it, he started looking it up.
Star Wars. Why is there a day?
And then he told me C-3PO showed up and he goes, I know who that is. I was like, oh yeah. And he's like, it's not R2D2, that's for sure. I was like, I mean, no, you're right. It's not. So that was my night last night. We stayed up until like 9:30 because we kept having to pause it because we couldn't watch the movie because he kept talking.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, shut up. Let's just watch this. He goes, you are so rude to Landon. I was like, or you interrupting the movie every 5 seconds is rude to everyone else in the room.
I tell my kids all the time, if you would just stop asking me and watch the movie, they're gonna tell you the answer to your question in like 2 seconds. Oh, wait, you missed it because you were talking.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, man. So I guess last week was kind of weird, but I think you spoke first. So in
we talked about the
theory,
same thing, but then, yeah, I'm pretty sure I started this off.
I think it's me that goes first this time.
Go for it.
All right. Well, I will be covering true crime again this week. And today's case, like we talked about it in the end of our last episode, will be the Giggling Granny, also known as the Lonely Hearts Killer, the Black Widow, or Lady Bluebeard. Her name was Nanny Doss. And go grab a drink, maybe some wine. I wish it wasn't so early in the day because that's what I would be drinking.
I have Dr. Pepper Zero.
I have Dr. Pepper Zero Cherry. So
are you serious?
Yes.
We are the same person.
Pretty much. I also have Coke Zero Cherry out in the fridge, but Dr. Pepper sounded good. Something about her that I will tell you initially is She's from Oklahoma, which is what sparked my interest in this case. Well, maybe not from Oklahoma, but that's where like it all like went
Goes
down.
down, yeah.
So I was like, ooh, okay, like a notorious serial killer in Oklahoma. Cool. This lady is I mean, like, damn. I don't even know. Like, you'll find out. But yeah, like I said, grab a snack, grab a drink. It's gonna be a long one. Nancy Hazel was born November 4th, 1905 in Blue Mountain, Alabama, to James and Lou Hazel. Her father was a very strict man. I mean, he ruled with an iron fist. So she spent most of her childhood just trying to avoid him and his wrath, I guess, which is really kind of just horrible and heartbreaking. But
it's usually how these stories start.
Well, no, not always. A lot of times there's head injuries.
Yeah, that too. You know, both, and there you have it.
Yep. Her father didn't hesitate to pull them out of school to work on the family farm. It was the priority instead of school being the top priority, which is also severely fucked up. So, because of all of that, Nancy decided to leave school for good. Guess what grade?
Fifth.
Sixth. She got to sixth grade. Now, we've all heard that head injuries, like I just mentioned, can cause people to potentially, not all head injuries cause you to become a serial killer or murderous, but it can.
Right.
Allegedly make you murderous. Well, when Nancy, or Nanny, as I'm just going to call her from here on out, because like for whatever reason, and I could not find it in any of my research, why she changed her name from Nancy to Nanny, but she did. So I'm just going to call her that from now. Nanny was 7 when she was on a train, and it suddenly like came to an abrupt halt, and it caused her to fall forward and hit her head.
There it is.
After this accident, she experienced migraines, blackouts, depression. She blamed her mental instabilities on that specific accident in her childhood.
Goodness.
I mean, but is it a scapegoat type thing? Like, oh, well, we've heard it before, you know.
Oh,
so
maybe, yeah.
Or
but back then, I don't know.
Maybe it's something that she really believed. I don't know. One source I found said that her favorite hobby in childhood was to read her mother's romance novels or magazines. And she would dream of her own romantic future, which I think is kind of sweet.
Yeah.
Until you hear more about her.
Yeah.
During her teenage years, like most girls, she was excited about growing up. And, you know, whenever I was younger, I kind of like experimented with my look. I mean, more than I already do, like as an adult, which is manic episodes lead to a lot of new hair phases for me. But she was excited about, you know, growing up. So you would think that primping and getting all dolled up and wearing cute clothes would be something she'd look forward to. Well, like I said, her father was kind of an ass, and he didn't allow that with her sisters at all. So that's kind of sucky.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to like do anything fancy, I guess. And they weren't allowed to also have friendships with boys or any kind of relationship with a boy. So when Nanny got her first job in 1921, she hadn't had any socialization with the opposite sex. Now, I find that hard to believe, but maybe back when she went to school, they had like girl classroom, boy classrooms instead of intermixed classrooms. I also didn't find that specific details about
maybe
her life.
They were simply just classmates. And because she was so scared of her dad, kind of like if they had recess or whatever, she's not going to associate.
That's a very big possibility too. Well, she got her first job at a linen factory. And while she was working at the linen factory, she met a coworker who just happened to be a boy. His name was Charlie Braggs. And
you were going to say Charlie Brown.
Charlie Brown. No, that would be weird. That would be a really weird coincidence.
Charlie Brown.
Yeah. So Charlie Braggs, or now as I want to call him, Charlie Brown, lived with his mother, and he took care of her, and she was unmarried. So it was just the two of them. Isn't that kind of sweet?
Yeah.
Everybody wishes that, you know, their children will grow up to one day take care of them, I think. And so that seems kind of sweet.
Yeah.
They were just 16 when they got married.
Oh.
Yeah.
We both got married young, but still feels weird. 16
I mean,
versus
16's a lot different than 19 or
developmentally,
18.
I feel. Maybe not much, but it feels that way just based on my own life experiences.
Oh no, like I live in a region where people are raised to think that, or not all people, but a lot of people I know are raised to think that you have to get married super young. So that was where my mindset was just kind of like what everybody did.
Yeah.
I mean, not saying that I wouldn't remarry Alan, but maybe we should have dated longer. Got married a little bit later when we were like, I don't know, a little more financially stable than an 18 and a 20-year-old.
Big same, only it was military involved. And you can't do shit as just boyfriend and girlfriend with military involved.
No,
so we just went ahead and got married because we knew we wanted to get married sometime.
Yeah.
But hey, our anniversary is coming up in 10 days and no regrets.
Heck yeah. Yeah, my 14-year wedding anniversary is this October. So
now what's mine?
I think you're at 11 years.
12. Yeah, because 2019
didn't you just go to Bora Bora?
In 2019, 2020 didn't exist.
2020 does not exist. It's like a blur.
You know, 2019 was our 10-year anniversary trip. And then 2020
did fly by. It's kind of crazy.
Well,
so they got married at 16, and she had dreams of escaping the iron ruling of her father, only to find out that her mother-in-law that she would be moving in with was just as bad.
Oh no.
Apparently, she was quite controlling and manipulative, which sucks.
That's stereotypical monster-in-law, which I hate.
I hate that too.
But
not all mother-in-laws are terrible. Not all husbands are awful. Like not all wives are eating bonbons like Peggy Bundy, but you know, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
So this lady apparently was just awful and very controlling, very manipulative, and they lived with her, which sucks. They had their first child in 1923. Oh, baby. Until you find out that they had 3 more over the course of the next 3 years. So a baby each. Like that's a lot of kids in a short amount of time.
And that's a very long time being constantly pregnant.
Not even just that, the toll that it takes on your body, not just physically, but mentally, like
I couldn't do it.
So maybe it was a head injury, or maybe it was like having that many kids that short a time together that made her like crazy. But she had a lot of kids in a small amount of time. I mean, 4 kids in 3 years, like, oh, that's a lot of babies. I love children most of the time, you know, like specifically when they're sleeping, because they don't talk back at that point. My son's at that age where he's a little bit more than sassy sometimes.
Yeah, you have my children.
Yeah. I like it though, because it shows that he's not afraid to stand up for himself, even if he's wrong. He'll learn the difference.
Really neat. It's neat to see who they are as humans come through.
Oh, you mean they're not just pets or toys that we play with when we want to? Darn. So what became of her life after she got married and had kids is kind of sad. She thought she'd found the guy of her dreams and everything would be like those romance magazines that she read when she was a child that she'd borrow from her mom, probably most likely without her dad knowing about it.
I'm sure.
Thing is, her husband, Charlie, was allegedly an abusive, adulterous drunk. Yeah.
Man, can't catch a break.
She felt imprisoned in the life that she had, taking care of the small children with a very demanding mother-in-law. And to cope with all this stress, she began going out and drinking. Yeah. At bars, and sort of had her own little adulterous situation going on. It didn't seem like their marriage was going to last long after she figured out she could leave the house, I guess. Maybe it was doomed from the beginning, honestly. I mean, they were 16. They had 4 kids in a very small amount of time. Like, I don't know. Good for you, not for me type situation is how I'm going to leave it at that. This is where shit starts to hit the fan, though. So in 1927, soon after their 4th child was born, the 2 middle children, they suddenly die.
No.
Yeah, if you could see Lindsay's face right now, she looks like she's about to cry. Because, like,
I'm not about to cry, but that's awful.
Yeah, like the face
I just specified because I cry at everything.
Yeah, she kind of does. That's okay. I don't cry unless I'm in the shower where no one can see me. So there's that. To each their own. They died, and the doctors labeled the cause of death as food poisoning, suspecting that Nanny had been the one who poisoned the children. Charlie took off with the oldest child. Her name was
poisoned
Malvina.
food.
Yeah, poisoned food. Like food
I was thinking food poisoning, like the food was rancid or something.
It didn't specify in the notes, but I'm assuming
if they think she did it would have to be poisoned food.
Yeah, but they didn't pursue her, so I'm guessing the doctor just was like, oh, they died of like food poisoning, which is tragic.
Maybe suspicion, but can't really
prove it. I didn't find that in my notes specifically stating that the doctors like thought it was her, but her husband sure did. He took Malvina and left the last born child, Florine, which is a horrible name because it sounds like chlorine, but
I was about to ask if he said chlorine.
No. Florine. Florine? That's how I'm going to say it.
Very close to fluoride.
Yeah, that too. Oh, and he left his mom behind. So he only took the oldest child and said, see ya to his mom and to his only other remaining child, which is really heartbreaking.
How could you leave your child?
I ask that about a lot of things that I see on like TikTok or here on podcasts or the news. It's just heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Not long after he left, his mother died. So where did Nanny go? Do you think she went back home to her parents? No. She stayed in the Braggs' home, and everything seemed fine. And she went back to life as normal, I guess, so to speak, until a year later when Charlie returned with Malvina and a new girlfriend.
Oh, great.
So he apparently moved on.
Well, from the sounds of it, he moved on before he even left.
I mean, that too. Maybe he just found something a little less crazy elsewhere, which is not saying that adultery is cool. It's not.
No.
I don't condone it. But I mean, if you think she murdered your children, I wouldn't want to be with her either. Although there's this weird thing called divorce.
But not back then, really. Not on the same level.
Yeah, it wasn't as common back then.
Exactly.
So they did end up getting divorced shortly after he moved back. So it's kind of like, whoa, for the time frame, especially. After the divorce, she took her 2 daughters. So Charlie said, see you to his. I don't know why he would take the kid in the first place and then not try to keep
the kid to save her. Because maybe left the baby because the baby's too young, needs the mom, whatever.
Right.
Finds the new girl. Oh, we don't really care anymore. Bye.
I couldn't figure it out in my research. Maybe he just said and decided to start fresh with the new family.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't get it.
That's my theory.
A theory because I couldn't find it in notes to clarify. So
that's my theory. Fresh start. Never happened.
Charlie said he left because he was scared, according to one source I had found, that Nanny poisoned his children and that maybe she would harm him. And I guess he returned after he found something less terrifying to pursue. So she found herself alone again. She returned home to her childhood home to live with her parents, and she brought 2 children with her, and she would spend time like she used to as a child reading romance magazines. But then she decided she'd start corresponding with the Lonely Hearts column in the magazine, talking to different men who would write in. Well, here comes Robert Harrelson. Harrelson was 23 and Doss was 24 when they married in 1929. So her marriage lasted a while to her first husband. It didn't say in my notes exactly how long he was gone.
Right.
But I'm guessing a while. Malvina, Florine, and Nanny and Robert all lived together in Jacksonville, Alabama. But she came to the conclusion once again that she did not meet the romantic hero that she thought she would meet. This guy didn't meet those standards.
The problem when you get so in your head about a fictional idea.
Well, not even that one. Like, I mean, it's very productive to have like a pro and con list to everything in life, in my opinion, because I'm type A personality. Not even just that. It's good to have standards, ladies and gents. Sure. It's good to have standards. But you can't be so like, oh, about everything, because nobody's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's ever going to live up to those perfect expectations that you have set. And if you put people on a pedestal, they will often fall. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. The person on the pedestal is going to fall. I said that kind of weird.
And they'll hit their head a lot harder than Nanny did on that train. So he didn't meet those standards. And allegedly he was a drunk. He was in debt. And his favorite pastime seemed to be getting into bar fights. Surprisingly, their marriage lasted 16 years.
Oh, okay.
I know a lot of mothers, me, and I fall into this category, dream of the day when you become a grandma. I mean, I'm not going to have any more babies, so I like when other people have babies so I can snuggle them and like to one day be a grandma. Yeah, to one day be a grandma and like snuggle it and cuddle it and give it all the sugar and send it home like everyone did my children. It'll be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for Nanny, she got that opportunity when her daughter Melvina had her first child in 1943.
Okay.
She named him Robert after her stepfather, and I think that's sweet.
That is sweet.
Shortly after that, in 1945, she also had a baby girl. Here's the thing, though.
Melvina did or Nanny did?
Melvina.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Nanny's done having children.
I thought so, but I was just like, oh, dang.
I feel like my notes may tell me otherwise because I don't remember everything to say, but I'm fairly certain Nanny's done having children. She's on to the grandma phase.
All right.
She had a little girl, but the baby died soon after for unexplained reasons. And that is just heartbreaking and terrible. And I couldn't imagine.
It was always one of my biggest fears, which I'm assuming that's probably what happened to that baby.
Well, maybe. Melvina was in and out of consciousness after a very difficult delivery, but recalled, according to a source that I had found, that she saw her mother stick a hat pin, like I guess that you would stick like
the pins to hold the hats on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a straight pin. I'm pretty sure.
Into the infant's head. Yeah. Like the thought makes me want to cry and it makes me cringe. Now. Yeah, it makes me a little nauseous, not gonna lie. There was no proof ever found that actually happened. So it's just something that her daughter strongly believed.
What?
If she did what her daughter thinks she did, this woman is beyond a monster.
Yeah.
An infant, I can't even,
here's the thing,
heartbreaking when people murder people, period. But like babies?
And here's the thing too, though, you have to remember there was already suspicion about the other kids. So it's at what point is oh, coincidentally, everyone's just suspicious that she's over here killing children?
I just don't know how she gets away with things so often.
That's how a lot of these cases are, though, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, you always hear, they were so nice. They seem so normal. Well, maybe they're all just really good actresses and actors. Poor baby.
Oh, it makes me feel so sick.
Some people never cease to amaze me. I'm just going to be honest. More tragedy struck their family. July 7th, 1945. Nanny was taking care of Robert, the baby, not Robert, the husband. And Melvina and her were fighting because Melvina had a new boyfriend. That night, baby Robert died.
Oh. What happened to him?
The doctor said he asphyxiated from an unknown cause. So he died, it sounds like, from being smothered. But then again, there's SIDS and...
Well, how old?
So this was... She had the baby in 43 and then in 45.
So he was 2, yeah.
Wait, is that right? Scrolling, sorry guys. Yeah, in 45. So he was just 2.5 at that point, depending on when his birthday
SIDS
fell.
Is not an issue, but 2-year-olds, they choke on food.
That could, it's heartbreaking. The doctor said it was from unknown causes, so I guess they never thought to look at her, just chalked it up to an accident.
Well, so far, everything around her has been accidents, quote unquote, with the air quotes.
Interesting enough, though, she got an insurance policy payout after the baby died. Not the mom. Of course she did. The grandma for $500. And $500 period is quite a good sum of money. It doesn't make you rich, but I mean, it's nice to have.
Right.
Then it would be a lot more because of inflation and stuff than now. So $500 in, what was it, 1945? That was a lot of money. That was a lot of money back then. And she got the insurance payout for baby Robert. On September 15th in 1945, Robert, the adult, Robert Harrelson, became very ill and he died.
Of course.
Dawes said that he had came home drunk the night before. Trigger warning, he raped her allegedly.
Oh.
So the next day she decided, enough's enough. And that was the final straw. And she poisoned him with rat poison.
Oh.
Put it in his whiskey jar.
I mean, if what she said was true, the only reason I question it is because of the other stuff surrounding her.
Yeah.
But I can't say I blame her if that's what happened.
If that's what actually happened.
But it's just suspicious because of all the other issues there.
The thing of it, though, it's not self-defense because she didn't.
She waited.
Stop
It's
it
premeditated at that
she
point.
waited, so it's premeditated. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
Not okay what he did, allegedly did, I should say, but it's not okay what she did either.
Right.
So she's got no grandchildren anymore, no more husband. What's Nanny to do? Return to the classified ads, of course.
Oh, naturally.
And that's, I mean, I would personally grieve, but not all of us are the same. I mean, the classifieds worked for her once before, so I guess she'd give it another shot. And within 2 days of meeting this guy, Arlie Lanning, they got married. That is like some like storybook, see it on a movie type of stuff. I didn't think that kind of stuff actually happened in real life. Like you meet somebody and then 2 days later you're married.
Kind of makes sense for the time, probably.
Perhaps. I also didn't see how long they corresponded in any of the research I could do, how long they corresponded before the actual marriage took place. So perhaps I'm being very generous with her. They talked for a while, met in person, just said, oh, I'm in love with you. Let's get married. But soon Nanny figured out this guy was also not the romantic hero that she wanted. Like her previous husband and her late husband, this man was an alcoholic, but he wasn't violent. He didn't have the hobby of being adulterous on his hands. This time she's the one that would leave for months at a time instead of it being the other way around. In 1950, after just 2.5 years of marriage, her new husband miraculously just became ill and died out of nowhere.
She just has the worst luck, don't you know?
Yep. At the time, they believed he died of a heart attack brought on by the flu that was going around. His symptoms included fever, vomiting, stomach pains, and he had a history of drinking. And the doctors believed that his body just wasn't strong enough to overcome the illness. He wasn't strong enough to survive. Unfortunately, no autopsy was done to prove anything else happened.
Of course, these are all just horrible coincidences.
She has the worst luck. Now, his house went to his sister when he died, but it took a little bit for her to, I guess, get ownership of it, because just 2 months before his sister took ownership, the house burnt down.
Oh,
what a shame. I wonder how that happened. So what's Nanny to do? She's got no house. It burned to the ground. She's got no husband.
Find a new man.
He died. Well, she temporarily moved into her mother-in-law's house, so Arlie's mother's house, until she received that insurance check for the burned down house. Then she decided she had to go be with her sister Dovey, like the bird. I think that's a very unique name, and it's actually pretty. She went to live with her sister Dovey. Aw, that's nice. Except her sister's dying of cancer,
of course,
which is just terrible.
And kind of convenient for Nanny.
Yeah. So before she moved to be with her sister Debbie, her mother-in-law died in her sleep.
But did she really?
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
So what are we at now? Husband number 4. Husband number 4, she did not meet in the classifieds like she had met the last 2 husbands. No. She didn't meet him at work like her first husband. I mean, why would this lady need a job? Apparently she's got a whole job of just murdering people and getting rewards for
Insurance checks.
So She met this guy at a singles club, the Diamond Circle Club to be precise. And his name is Richard L. Morton of Emporia, Kansas. They were married in October of 1952, and they made their home in Kansas. Unlike her last husband, he wasn't an alcoholic, but he did turn out to be an adulterer. This lady can't catch a break. Not that sure that she deserves one. She learned he was seeing his old girlfriend on the side, and without giving it a second thought, he didn't have long to live. She already had her sights on a new man from Kansas named Samuel Doss. But before she could take care of her new husband, Richard, her father had died, and her mother came for a visit. Within days of her mother visiting, she was complaining of severe stomach cramps and just passed away. Richard, however, just 3 months later, was complaining of the same symptoms her mother had. That must be one hell of a stomachache, guys, because he died the same way her mom did. After Richard Martin's death, her mother's in the grave. Just after 3 months after Richard Martin's death, Nanny moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and soon became Mrs. Samuel Doss in June of 1953. Samuel Doss was a Nazarene minister who had unfortunately and very tragically lost his family in a Madison County, Arkansas tornado. He disapproved of romance stories and magazines, things of that nature, but he adored his wife. He was a good, decent man, unlike all the others that she had been married to. He wasn't a drunk. He didn't go after other women. So he wasn't an alcoholic or a womanizer.
That's too bad about her then.
He wasn't an abuser. He was a good man of God who fell in love with the likes of this woman. So it seems to be the perfect fit. She finally found that romance man of her dreams. Except, even though he doesn't beat his wife or cheat on his wife, he's very frugal. Very frugal. And he's kind of boring.
Oh.
That being said, he lived a very regimented lifestyle and expected the same out of his wife. On top of the no romance novels, no romance magazines, no love stories on TV, none of that was permitted. And get this, guys, they both had to go to bed at 9:30 every night. I mean, in theory, that's a good idea for everyone to get proper rest, but that seems a bit strict to have a bedtime set by your husband.
Yeah.
He was generous. He gave her an allowance, but he did keep very tight control over his money and gave her very little. And this didn't set right with Nanny.
Well, yeah.
So she up and left for Alabama, threatening to only return if Samuel agreed to put her on his checking account.
Oh.
Yeah. So she gave him an ultimatum.
Other stuff out. That's bold and good for her, but
yeah.
Add in the rest and it's kind of cancels it out.
The loving couple reunited, and she became the doting wife that he deserved, honestly, and convinced him to take out life insurance policies, two to be exact.
There it is.
And make her the sole beneficiary on both. She had everything she wanted, but before the ink had even come close to drying, Samuel was in the hospital complaining of stomach problems. Mm-hmm. But he fought for his life and struggled to survive for almost 2 weeks in the hospital. Then he recovered just enough to return home. And on his first night back with his loving, doting wife, Nanny served him a home-cooked meal. And just 3 hours later, he was found dead after just being home and eating dinner. 3 hours later, he died. Even though he was healthy enough to go home.
I am so shocked.
A little suspicious. The doctors were obviously and rightfully so alarmed that he had passed away so quickly after being returned home that they ordered an autopsy. Here's the thing, that autopsy turned out to be really helpful. The organs, all of his organs, turned out they were full of arsenic, and every finger was pointed at his doting wife, Nanny Doss.
Well, yeah.
It's about time she got caught. Once she was arrested, Nanny confessed to killing her 4 husbands, her mother, her sister, her grandson, and her mother-in-law.
God. Never admitted to the kids, though.
No. So the state of Oklahoma opened up a case against her just for Samuel Doss, because I'm guessing jurisdiction lines, none of them happened in Oklahoma except for him. They couldn't go after her for anything else. Nanny Doss was persecuted Prosecuted. Sorry, my Red Bull has wore off, guys. Prosecuted by J. Howard Edmondson, who later became the governor of Oklahoma. Fun fact. She also pled guilty, which, I mean, she should, but not very many of these people do. She pled guilty on May 17th, 1955, and was sentenced to life in prison.
This is a few days away, yeah.
Yep. The state of Oklahoma ultimately did not pursue the death penalty due to her being a woman. So because she was of a specific gender, I guess, due to the time that all this went down, she got off a little easier than she should have.
Convenient for her.
Right. Now, despite never being charged with the other deaths, she still admitted to them, which, I mean,
that's something.
I'll give her that. She could have just said, oh, no, I didn't kill any of them. But I mean, she did. She admitted to it. She's a horrible person and a prolific murderer, believed to have killed up to 11 people. The thing is, she seemed to enjoy the limelight. I just don't get that.
The whole woe is me, look at all the tragedy I have experienced. And
well, not even just that, but she was noted as joking about her husband's deaths and how she killed them. One such incident was that she served one of them a sweet potato pie that was laced with arsenic. Like, she earned the nickname the Giggling Granny because of how she behaved in the trial. I was going to
ask, where did the giggling part come in?
Yeah, because she was just all smiles and giggles and
when you know it.
Thought it was so cute how she behaved, and it's just disgusting.
Give me chills. Oh, I hate it.
After spending only 8 years in prison, Nanny Doss died of leukemia in the state of Oklahoma's penitentiary. The only husband that she didn't kill, I'm wrong. I said she killed 4 husbands. She didn't kill her first husband, but he left. So, and like I said, my Red Bulls wore off. She killed at least 3 of them, maybe 4. How many times was she married? 5? A lot, guys. I've lost count too. She's been married a lot. She's admitted to killing several people and was only tried for one of them. And that is a story of Nanny Doss and the Giggling Granny.
No.
Ugh.
I'm not here for it.
I'm not okay with the nickname either. I don't think it's cool to give serial killers or murderers nicknames, guys. They usually are after the attention and the fame.
It kind of glorifies them or romanticizes them, and they're like, oh, I'm so cool now.
Like when those women say Ted Bundy was attractive. All right, so that was my case. What do you have for me this week, Lindsay?
Well, it's funny you mentioned a case from where you grew up, because I'm talking about something from where I grew up. I grew up in Frankfort, Kentucky, and anybody who's from Kentucky knows that one of the most haunted places in the country is right there in Louisville, the Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And you said you've actually been there.
Yes, one time. Surprisingly, I lived there the first 19 years of my life, but I've only been to Waverly one time, and I actually had to travel back to Kentucky to go. But I am going to do my story just a little bit different today. I am going to go a little bit into like the history and like all of that, but we've been talking on several episodes about how we want to bring listener stories into Rosewood Manor. We said we're going to go sit in the parlor, and then we want people to send in their stories. So I figured, what better way to introduce that than to get some listener stories myself from people like my friends, my family, and of course myself, who have all gone to Waverly. So I posted on my Facebook and texted some friends, and so that's what we're going to end this episode with.
Oh, fantastic.
Also, before I get into the history, because I'm doing the listener stories, there's so much history to this building. It's going to be very condensed. And actually, another podcast on our network, shout out to Fearscape Paranormal Podcast, did a 2-part episode on Waverly Hills back in 2019. It was back when Fearscape was a radio show local to like the Louisville area. And if you go on Stitcher, you can search Waverly, or the episode is called Road to 100, Days Gone By from the Fearscape FM Archives, Waverly Hills Sanatorium. There's part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is the history. Part 2 is all the haunting stuff. I listened to them back when they aired, and then I re-listened to them the other day, and they're great. Lots of good information, things that I didn't even know when I grew up in Kentucky. So I definitely, if you want more than what I give you, definitely go listen to them.
I'm gonna have to check it out after we get off the recording.
And it's really funny to listen to because they recorded it in 2019. And so they're talking about how tuberculosis was such a new disease, and they're doing research, just trying to like testing treatments to see if they would work, and like how crazy it must have been to live in times like that. Fast forward to 2021, and we all know that we have now lived in times like that.
That's crazy.
But so yeah, all of the information I'm giving you guys today is either things that I grew up knowing from that podcast, which had a lot more than I knew growing up, and from Waverly Hills official website. Okay, so let's jump in. Waverly Hills is most known for being the tuberculosis hospital in the early 1900s, but it was actually originally private land owned by a Major Thomas H. Hayes back in 1883. He needed a school for his children because back then you didn't just put them on a bus.
Right.
So he decided just to build one right there on the property because, you know.
I mean, if you have enough money, might as well.
Yeah. And so he ended up hiring a woman to be their teacher, and she really liked Sir Walter Scott's books, the Waverly novels. And so she coined the name Waverly Hill into now, and it has stuck since. I thought it was like a really nice name. Then it became a tuberculosis hospital in 1910. And back then, like I mentioned before, it was a new, scary illness, not really a lot of information to treat it, but one of the most common ways to treat it was fresh air and sunlight. And so a lot of times, like you may have heard, like people going, especially like towards the Rocky Mountains, like Colorado and all that, because they thought like the thinner air and all that would help as well. And so with Waverly being up on a big hill, perfect place. And it's like, it's surrounded by trees, like a forest and stuff. So it was nice, serene location.
Well, not to mention all the oxygen from the trees helped.
I'm sure, yeah. So the original building that was on the property that was built to be a TB hospital was only going to accommodate about 40 to 50 patients. And they really started to outgrow that. So in 1924, they constructed a bigger facility that would accommodate at least 400 patients, and it opened in 1926, and that is the building that we still see today. So if you look up pictures of Waverly Hills, it's like this huge kind of Gothic looking architecture, like intimidating building. And that was what was opened in 1926 to be their new hospital. And then it remained a TB hospital until 1961. In 1962, it became a geriatric facility, but was ultimately closed by the state. In 1981, there was unfortunately like abuse, neglect, like that kind of typical geriatric center type thing.
I hate that.
Yeah, me too. And then after the geriatric center closed, it kind of got passed around by owners, different things that they tried to make it, tried to make it a prison, that didn't work out, tried to make it apartments, that didn't work out. In the Fearscape episode, because I have no recollection of this, so I have to cite the Fearscape episode, they actually talked about, I guess, like a church at one point wanted to build a giant Jesus statue up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, but really nothing ever came of it, and it just sat there and fell into disrepair with vandalism and just sitting there. And then in 2001, which I did not realize it was so recent that all of this happened. In 2001, it was purchased by Charles and Tina Mattingly, who are described on Waverly's official site as historical and paranormal enthusiasts. They have worked to keep the history of Waverly alive, as well as restore it to its former glory. You can take tours of the building. You can, they do like holiday things. Like they have a haunted house around Halloween. They do Christmas light show, I think fireworks at 4th of July, all sorts of stuff to try to raise money to help restore this building, because it's still, I went in 2018 and it's still pretty falling apart.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine how much it would take to repair a building of that size.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, a building of that size probably costs millions, or $1 million at least, to build.
Right.
And it would probably take at least a quarter to a half of that to get it back to where it needs to be.
Right. Especially at this point, it's nearly 100 years old.
Yeah. That's a long time for a structure to be standing.
Mm-hmm. So before I get into like all the haunting stuff, though, I do want to touch on its time as a tuberculosis hospital, because that'll kind of help understand why the hauntings are of such magnitude, I guess. So, but like I said earlier, I said it like I guess 3 times now, tuberculosis was new and unknown back then. They were just trying a bunch of different things, hoping it worked. And I mentioned they did like the fresh air, sunlight. If you go into Waverly, they have a solarium, like the area specifically like to get sunlight and stuff. But then they also have like just a bunch of windows. They don't have glass in them, so it was fresh air coming in. And there was even like a playground on the roof for the kids who were sick, so that they could go out and they could get sunlight and fresh air while still being kids, versus like, no, you need treatment.
I like how it's on the roof. Super safe.
We can get into that later. But then they also did things that were more experimental and in a lot of cases much more gruesome.
I don't like the way anything experimental ever sounds when it comes to medical.
I know.
Especially in the older time frames, when you hear about, oh, we have this new experimental, it never ends well.
No, because this was the 1910s, 1920s. Like,
yeah, I understand all medicine needs to be tried and you got to go through all the research, but using people as guinea pigs is not always the best way, in my opinion, to go about it.
Absolutely. And so some of the treatments that they tried were like doing surgery to remove the infected parts of lungs, and that could be just like a little spot off your lung or an entire lung or partial. Yeah.
Ouch.
Mm-hmm. They would do something that would like paralyze part of your diaphragm, which to me sounds terrifying, because I'm pretty sure I pulled my diaphragm once. I lifted a couch to get my puppy out from underneath of it when he was real small, and I've never felt so much pain outside of like childbirth.
Ouch.
Like it hurt, like I could barely breathe. I can't imagine purposefully paralyzing part of that.
Also, that would just give me a panic attack, knowing that you're having trouble breathing already and then having more trouble on top of that. Whenever I think about breathing too much, I obviously feel like I can't breathe, which is a whole
doing
other
this
thing.
research, I was kind of like, it just gets you thinking about it. But I guess paralyzing part of the diaphragm made it where the infected lung could kind of rest and heal.
Okay.
And they would remove ribs to try to help you breathe easier. Yeah. And the one that skeeved me out the most was opening the chest cavity for UV therapy. So like they did the what was it, heliotherapy, where you're out in the sunlight, and sunlight helps. We know sunlight helps with illnesses, vitamin D, right?
Yeah.
But if they're really sick, it wasn't enough. So they would open up their chest and put lights on them.
That sounds unsanitary.
Maybe. I can't say on whether or not it was or not. And I'm sure there were some more other treatments, but those were the ones, like the main ones that like I can remember and kind of freaked me out a little bit, whatever. But the point is, kind of some weird shit was going on, and like there's no offense to the doctors who were trying it, because they were just trying to help people. But by the time Waverly was no longer a TV hospital, which I said, what, like 1961, about 50 years as a TV hospital, 63,000 people had died just while it was a TV hospital. So you can imagine that there is a ton of energy and spirits just kind of trapped there.
Absolutely.
And then of course you get into the whole, like the idea, I don't know if you've ever heard like how like certain stones absorb the energy, like in limestone's a really big one.
Okay.
Kentucky is like limestone. Yeah. So you can imagine like that kind of, I'm sure, affects it and goes into play. But we're going to talk a little bit now about all the spirits and stuff that happen at Waverly. So if you're like me and grew up in Kentucky, you've heard all the basics of the hauntings of Waverly. There is the death tunnel, room 502, the creeper, shadow people, little Timmy who plays with the ball, and the doppelganger.
Okay.
But I said before, death tunnel isn't near as scary as it sounds. A lot of people, there's like rumors and legends that it's the death chute, and it's just this like big laundry chute that they would shoot the bodies down. And no, it's not that. Never has been that. It started out, it's an underground tunnel that was like 500 something feet long, something like that. I don't remember. I didn't write down the exact number, to be honest. But it was used to get like supplies up the hill, especially like if there's bad weather, like snow and whatnot, because back then roads and stuff were a little bit different. If the weather was bad, it was for the staff to come up and down the hill. But then as the death toll reached its peak, which at its peak, it was approximately 1 death an hour.
Holy crap.
They did start transporting bodies down the hill in the tunnel in like a track and pulley system with cart or whatever. So that way the patients and the staff weren't just seeing tons of bodies being taken out. And then it's discouraging. Look at how things have been just in 2020. Like that's really, look at, if you remember all the pictures from Italy.
Yeah.
Whenever COVID was like first starting out there, like they were trying to prevent that feeling. And so they did send the bodies down that way. But no, they did not shoot them down like a slide. Just to clear that up, because I'm sure.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. And also, funnily enough about the Death Tunnel, in 2005, there was a movie released called Death Tunnel that was inspired by Waverly. It's been probably 15 years since I've watched it. I didn't watch it when it first came out, I don't think, but I have watched this movie before. And if my memory serves, it was terrible.
Oh.
Like I remember there's one ghost who's supposed to be like the main guy of the hauntings, which is not a Waverly thing at all. And he had the most Georgia Southern accent. And we're
instead of a Kentucky accent.
And we're like, I'm from Kentucky. Listen to me talk right now. We don't talk like this. I can't do a Georgia accent, but that's my closest impression.
You don't sound like Blanche off of the Golden Girls.
It's not the same kind of accent at all. But I did find out that apparently one of my friends knew somebody who was like an extra or something in that movie.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So good for that person. And then next, I'm going to talk about room 502, which is legendary, and about the fifth floor in general. But first, I have to start off with a trigger warning. The legend of room 502 is very intense, even though it's just a legend and there's no actual like recorded documentation if it's true or not. It's a very serious, heavy topic, so please proceed with caution. Well, to start, a lot of people are skeptical about this story just for the fact that it's room 502. 502, if you don't know, is the area code for a large portion of Kentucky, including Louisville, which is where Waverly is. And so it just kind of seems a little too on the nose. Like, oh, there's this huge dark legend at Waverly, and it happens to be in the room that is our area code.
Yeah, that's a little
sketch.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. There is something there in 502, but if this story is true or not, that's what gets people to kind of be like, really? You're going to say 502 of all the rooms? So first of all, the fifth floor is, if you're looking at the pictures of it, there's like this part that kind of comes up a little bit, almost like a clock tower. It's like the whole building is like this huge, long building, and then there's like a part of it. That's what kind of makes it look Gothic looking. That's the fifth floor. It's a really small. It's not a full floor like all the other rooms are. And there's always rumors that it was like where all the mentally ill patients were. Ooh, scary. But in Fearscape, he said that a historian told him that it was where some of the children were, but it was mostly like a nurse's station and used for supplies. So
I also like the fact that everyone thinks that mentally ill people are scary. I mean, I'm only scary sometimes.
From back then, you know?
Yeah. Let's shame all the mental illness.
I'm like, oh, don't go on that floor. That's where they went.
Yeah.
But 502 is, it said that one day, and again, trigger warning, it was said that a nurse was found and she was hanging by apparent suicide.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. The story surrounding it is that she was allegedly pregnant out of wedlock, which this was, I can't remember the year. I think it is the late 20s, maybe the early 30s when this allegedly happened.
So heavily frowned upon at the time.
Yeah. And of course, there's also rumors that the father of the child was one of the young doctors, because that's like every story from every haunted hospital ever. But there is also another version of the story that that young doctor killed her. It made it look like suicide.
I mean, that's definitely messed up if that's the case.
Yeah, but it is 100% legend. There is documentation of a nurse dying, but no information has ever been given because I guess she still potentially has living family members.
Gotcha.
So there's no information, there's no name, there's nothing.
They just kept it closed.
Yeah, out of respect for the family, which I totally understand. But because of all of this, there's like some bad energy that's reported. I'll get into more of that when I get into like the reader or the listener experiences. Not reader. We don't read.
I mean, we can
read, but you don't read a podcast.
No.
However, there was also on the 5th floor another nurse who died. And I think this one is documented, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But it is said that a nurse jumped off of the roof, which,
ouch.
I mean, with both of these stories, I hate to say it, but look at what we've just been through in the last year with COVID. And look at the peak of Waverly, it was a death an hour.
Yeah, that's
I 100% believe it's possible and very likely.
It was just too much to handle. Yeah.
Which makes my heart feel so heavy. But the nurse jumping off the roof is actually one of the most popular spirits that people see at Waverly. They see something jumping off the roof.
Oh, that's messed up.
Yeah, which is apparently what is called a residual haunting. And I actually learned that back in 2019 when I first listened to the Fearscape episode. I had never heard of residual versus intelligent haunting. And residual haunting is like where the energy leaves an imprint, kind of like if you remember,
repeat that cycle over and over again.
Like if you remember, I mentioned on the Brown Palace Hotel, there's the guy in the train conductor uniform going towards where the train ticket office was.
Right.
So it's like the same kind of thing. So I thought that was really interesting. Like it makes sense, but I'd never heard it called something until I listened to that episode.
It's like their energy left an imprint and it's on loop.
Exactly. And so moving on, this is the spirit that scares me the most, and I'm very glad I did not experience it when we went. And that is the creeper.
Ugh, I don't like the way that sounds to begin with.
Exactly. It's really so bad. So the creeper is a shadow spirit, and he is seen crawling around, but not only on the floor, up the walls and like onto the ceilings.
Nope.
Which is straight horror movie shit. And it scares me so bad. But on the Fearscape episode, I thought it was really interesting. Apparently there's a theory, and my sister confirmed like she's heard this theory too. So I don't think they just like made it up. No offense, Stefan, I'm not saying you guys are liars. But, I guess because usually spirits do with similar things like they did in their living lives, right? Like there's still a person walking down a hallway or whatever. So humans don't crawl up walls and ceilings.
So is it a demon?
The theory is that he came over from another dimension. That he's not necessarily evil or anything, but not of our world.
Okay.
Which is very interesting to think about. I guess maybe like the intense energy from all of the stuff that happened at Waverly.
Right.
Like
some sort of like a poltergeist, but not a poltergeist.
Right. So it's like, is it possible that something like that could happen? Like there's so much energy, like a portal opens and here's this crawling Spider-Man thing. I don't know. I thought that was interesting, but I would like my soul would leave my body if I saw a shadow crawling up the wall.
Yeah, I don't think I would be okay with that either.
No, it gives me such chills. And then on a lighter side of that is the very common shadow people, which when I hear shadow people, I always think of like the bad entities, shadow people. But at Waverly, it's not like that. And I don't know if it's a different type of spirit or if it's just I have a misunderstanding of shadow people as a whole. I don't know. But I can't remember if it's the 3rd or 4th floor. I'm wanting to say 4th. But like I said, I've only been there once.
Right.
So I can't remember everything. But you're in the hallway and it has like all the different rooms that are all still there. Even though they're like run down and vandalized and all that. Like and you can like be walking down the hallway, look in the room and see a shadow person, or you can see them poking their heads out the door, or a lot of times the tour guides will have somebody, usually like a man and a woman, like walk up and down the hallway with their arms out to the side, and you see the shadow people coming out with them.
Nope. But
yeah. So yeah, that's a very common thing though, around Waverly. And then I think it's on the same floor as this. And again, somebody's probably like a Waverly expert and is like, oh my God, this lady doesn't know what she's talking about. But there's also little Timmy, who is an intelligent spirit who he likes to play. And the reason they say he's an intelligent spirit versus residual is he plays when you ask him to. And he likes to roll a ball.
That sounds like something everyone should try to piss off the spirits and just provoke them.
Allegedly, he has never done anything bad. He's always been a good spirit.
Yeah, but every time I hear child spirit, I think demon.
I know. I get really freaked out by kids too. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation. I actually learned when getting my notes together for this episode, I was texting my sister about it, and she found a picture of a news clipping. It could be fake. I don't know. She just found the picture of it where apparently Timmy may have been a real person.
Oh.
Not just, so I always assumed they gave him the name Timmy. You know, like
yeah, they just named the spirit.
We call him this. He likes to play. But apparently there is a child, or I should say allegedly, there was a child named Timmy who was a healthy kid. There were healthy kids at Waverly whose parents were sick and they had nowhere else to go. And so they lived at Waverly too. And apparently he was like 10 or so and fell off the roof.
Oh no.
Yeah, which is where we talked about with the playground earlier. Yeah. I don't know. That's the very first time I've ever heard that. That was the first time she had ever heard that. So not sure the validity of that. But it's very real possibility the playground was on the freaking roof.
Like I said earlier, smart design.
I get the idea.
They had to put them somewhere.
Yeah, and the kids are gonna heal better if they can not be stressed and get to, yeah. Anyways, but yeah, so Timmy likes to play. And then the last, which might freak you out a little bit with your history, is the doppelganger.
Yeah.
Which the doppelganger is the one that scares my sister the most.
I had like a recurring nightmare about doppelgangers, and I wrote it into my book Twisted.
Mm-hmm. If you don't know what a doppelganger is, listeners, it's an entity that kind of like portrays itself as somebody else. And the legend is that like if you see your own doppelganger, like something's bad gonna happen, you might die. I can't remember if there's like a certain thing, like if it's with certainty, like, oh, you're gonna die if you see your doppelganger. But yeah, so it mimics people essentially. Like there's like reports of the tour guide being right there and they're talking to the tour guide, and then, oh, here comes the tour guide around the corner. Like, I've been over here the whole time. Like, that wasn't me you were talking to.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Freaky. So now that we know the basics, this is where we're going to start getting into the listener stories. And I'm going to start with my own experience. And I mentioned before, my very first time going to Waverly, my only time going to Waverly, was October 2018. It was for my sister, Laura, and her now husband, Cam's joint bachelorette party. And so we all went, we all drove up to Waverly, which, by the way, we had to drive separately because there was a large group of us. I was the one driving. I've never been to Waverly before. I was terrified driving up that hill.
I mean, did you think there were spirits that were potentially roaming?
Rainy. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
It was dark. It was rainy. I've never been to that. I've never driven in that part of Louisville. I may have been there at some point. My dad used to live there. But it was a dark, windy road. It was rainy, and it's just trees everywhere. And then you pull up and there's this big building.
Oh, how weird.
Like, yeah. So I was like on edge. That, and like we had just driven from Texas like that day. So I'm also on no sleep driving to do this. Like, oh, I was so scared. So then we do the tour, and we did like a combo tour where you do like the history ghost side, but then you also go through their haunted house that they do. And so it wasn't like the longest tour ever. It split the time or whatever. To tell you my ghost experience, I have to first tell you that my husband was a part of this because like it was, like I said, joint bachelorette. So we all went. He is so skeptical. I have believed in ghosts like most of my life, if not my entire life. And I still believe in them to this day. And I'll be like, oh my God, I think there's a ghost in the house. Like one of the kids said this, or I heard this or that. And he's just, yeah, whatever. He's never said, that's not real or anything like that. But you can just tell, not his thing. We're standing there and it was on the floor. It was when they were talking about little Timmy, I believe. So I can't tell you if little Timmy played with us because we were distracted by this. Poor guy's talking to us. And my husband taps on my shoulder and it's like, look, and points down the hallway.
Okay.
And we see a light orb going back and forth. And I was like, oh, it's probably, the stairs are over there. It's probably another tour guide, like trying to go to another floor. And he goes, no, keep watching. And I keep watching and you see the light. And at no point can you see a person moving the light.
Yeah, no.
There is no, because like if it's somebody with a flashlight, eventually they're going to move their arm in a way or something that indicates it is a human holding this light.
Right.
And nothing like that happened. And it just kept going back and forth. And I have chills right now thinking about it. And I was just like, but then,
yeah.
So now I'm going to get into listener stories. I do have more things I'm going to input from my experience there, but it goes into some of the other listener stories because the group that we were with, 3 of them, including my sister, sent in things that happened with them.
Oh, cool.
And so we are going to start with my friend Danny. She sent me a picture where you can see her group, but then you see like something over on the side.
Ooh.
And so she says, I went to Waverly in the summer of 2018 where it was almost too hot to be going through the old asylum. There was a group of us, my friend and I, and the others who had booked the tour for the same time. We were put into the gift shop where we had to watch a video, and then we were led in by an older woman. We toured the first floor, and I remember taking photos of everything that I could and being uncomfortably hot. We went to the famous tunnel, and I didn't really feel anything when looking down in it. Side note, I did not experience the death tunnel. I don't know if it wasn't open or if it just wasn't part of that tour.
Okay.
Back into Danny. She took us all over the building, not like first floor, second floor, third floor in that order, but first floor, third floor, back down to the second, back up to the third. She said, I guess it went with her persona that she was channeling that night. We went into several rooms where I started to feel claustrophobic as if I wasn't the only one in the room at the time. And I started getting this overwhelming feeling like I was sick. I kept telling my friend that I couldn't breathe. It felt like my lungs were giving out, and she took me out in the hallway and we walked down it a little bit to give me some room, but it wasn't until I left Waverly there where I felt normal again. I remember we went into these floors and rooms and it was pitch black where you couldn't see anything and we couldn't use our phones for light. The only light we had was the flashlight that the tour guide was giving us. I was literally blind because I can't see in the dark anyway. And my friend and I moved to the back of the group where she could guide me without being in people's way. We got to the floor where she sends one male and one female walking to where the ghosts were supposedly attached themselves to you as you walk back to the group, and no one wanted to volunteer, so I did because I'm not afraid of the supernatural. So I walked down the long hallway until she told me to stop, and she makes me wait for a good 5 minutes. I guess it's to let people's eyes adjust to the darkness. So I'm waiting there, and I didn't feel any kind of fear, but I felt extreme loneliness as if I was isolated. And I guess in a sense I was. I kept looking around at everything because I wanted to see what the rooms looked like. And honestly, I was a bit bored standing there. The tour guide finally tells me I can walk back, but I have to hold my arms out and walk slow. Everyone in the group starts to gasp and saying they see things attach themselves to me, but I didn't feel anything. Dylan, my friend, said she didn't see anything, but that doesn't mean something or someone wasn't there. So it was at the end of the tour when we were brought to the floor where the nurse, room 502, I'm not going to continue saying what happened, slash the children's floor, slash the patients that have TB of the brain, which I've never heard that outside of her story.
Okay.
Before she told us that this was the floor, I remember climbing the stairs and feeling depressed, like a wave of overwhelming sadness hit me. I felt like crying, and I eventually did as we got to explore the grounds. I remember we entered the room where the TB and the brain patient stayed, and I was like, I have to have a picture right now. I pulled out my phone, took a picture that I sent you. To me, in the picture, it looks like an older person, maybe a male or a female, sitting in the chair with a cane next to them, just staring at me. then you can see the other people mad because I blinded them, but I'm glad I snapped the photo. The next listener story is from one of my childhood best friends, Katie H. And there's two Katies, so this is Katie H. He says, I visited Waverly Hills about 8 to 10 years ago. I was either in my last couple of years of college or just starting vet school. Either way, I was home from school and I went with a few older coworkers of mine from the vet clinic who were in their 30s. We went on a tour and there were quite a bit of people there. Basically, they divided us up into two large groups and then divided those groups again into smaller groups. Each group got their turn on the floor of the hospital. A lot of creepy stuff happened, but the memory that stands out the most in my mind is what happened in the cafeteria. On the way to that floor with our groups were switching. The group ahead of us was raving about something awesome that had happened and how we weren't going to believe it. Our group, which was slightly bigger than that group that had just gone and included a few strangers other than her friends. She said there was probably about 18 people, was a little bigger. But anyways, the tour guide has us all sit down in a circle in the cafeteria and ask somebody for a mag light. And those are the little flashlights that turn on when you turn them a certain way. They don't have buttons or anything like that. Anyway, he puts the mag light in the middle of the floor and starts asking a ghost questions. Nothing happens. He tried several times with no avail. It was a little disappointing. Our group disbanded, but my friend group stuck around. I remember saying, well, that group of people was bigger than the one that went before us, so we should try it on our own. We moved down a little further to where the big cafeteria meets a smaller room where that was the children's cafeteria. My friend Sam put her own mag light on the ground and we started asking questions. The flashlight lights up. There was no explanation for this. The mag light was turned to the off position. It was on a different part of the floor than the tour guide put his, and it was one that my friend brought from home. We kept asking questions and realized that we were talking to a child ghost. Because we were asking it, are you older than 5? The flashlight would light up. Are you older than 12? Nothing. Do you like chocolate cake? It lit up like the 4th of July. Do you like broccoli? Nothing at all. At the beginning of the encounter, I asked if there were too many people before and if they were scared. The flashlight lit up at that. Some other people from our group came in while we were doing it and the light cut off in the middle of answering the question. They left and the conversation continued for a little while. I'm not sure how long we did that, but eventually the flashlight responses got fewer and far between and we moved on. Sometimes I think about that and how there was a little kid who was scared of the big group of people all alone in that cafeteria. I hope it's found its way on. I'll never forget that experience, and one day I hope to go back to Waverly.
That's crazy.
It's sad.
It is sad.
Like that child was scared of the big group of people.
Of strangers. Yeah.
Asking it questions. Like it's probably confused. Like feeling maybe lost. I don't know. As a mom especially, that makes me so sad.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So that was a really cool story. I vaguely remember her talking about going to Waverly, but I don't remember that story. So that's really cool. So our next story is from the other Katie T. She says, okay, the first time I went to Waverly Hills, Alyssa and her family, Alyssa's one of our other friends who had sent in a little tidbit. Alyssa and her family went with us to the Halloween haunt they do every year. That year, you went through the haunted house first before the tour. So I didn't know much about Waverly at the time. So in the haunted house, there was a part that you went through where it was thick boards on either side of you and it was pitch black, so you had to feel your way through. Well, halfway through the hallway, I felt a tug on my ponytail. I ended up telling one of the tour guides about it, and she said it was totally normal for Waverly, that is. Apparently around Halloween, the ghosts like to interact with the guests. I have several other experiences since then, but another memorable one is when I was on a tour, and our tour guide laid her flashlight on the windowsill. After a few minutes, the light flickered and eventually turned off on its own. That same trip, on the 5th floor, we heard a growl in room 502. There's, of course, the shadow people that you can see just zooming in the hallways, but the one story that always sticks out to me is the time I was on the 4th floor and I was with a larger tour group. Alyssa and I were in the back of the group looking down the hall while our tour guide talked to the rest of the group. And then I saw a tall, dark figure dash in an open room. Then, like a chain reaction, Alyssa gasped and confirmed what I saw was real. Then a woman in the front of the group claimed to see a woman in white on the opposite end of the hallway, to which the tour guide confirmed a woman in white appears on that floor all the time.
That's crazy.
And I have to add this. I wanted to say it so bad when I shared my story. Katie was part of the group for Laura and Cam's party thing. When we are up on the 5th floor, they tell you the story about 502, all that, and then you have a couple minutes to walk around, and it's a very small area. And I swear I can see it in my mind's eye. Katie saying she saw the nurse jump from the roof. And because I remember, because like there's a big spotlight thing that goes, because they have like a big event going on. And I remember like we were trying to figure out like, well, could it just be a shadow from the spotlight? And she was like, well, no, I saw the spotlight go. And then after saw the spirit jump.
Oh, how crazy.
I asked her about it when she sent me her story. I was like, okay, but do you remember this? And she's like, oh no, that must have been somebody else. I was like, oh, well, maybe it was somebody else in our group. Yeah, maybe I'm misremembering it. But then when I was talking to my sister, whenever I was doing my notes, whatever day that was, and I told you like she was sending like the newspaper clippings about Timmy and all that. She then says, but I also remember Katie seeing the woman jump from the roof. I was like, but no, I texted Katie. She says that was not her.
Oh, how weird.
What if we were talking to the doppelganger?
No. I don't like that.
Yeah, that hit me. I think it was yesterday when we were talking about that. And I was just like, Laura, the doppelganger. And that's the one that she's terrified of. So she's like,
Right.
No, I don't want to think about it. But for all that, like, how do we both remember it being Katie specifically that saw this and talked about seeing this? And Katie, no, that wasn't me.
Mandela effect sounds a lot nicer than doppelganger.
Yeah, but Mandela effect's not a known thing at Waverly.
Oh.
So yeah, like when I had that realization, I legitimately almost cried.
I would too.
Because I was like, oh, I'm just thinking about somebody else. But then Laura also said it was Katie. Like, what are the chances? It's not like everybody in the group looked alike.
Right.
So I don't know. But now we're going to get into Laura's story. So Laura says, I first went in like 2012 or something with Alyssa and her family. Sidebar. Alyssa is one of my best friends. I consider her a sister. She grew up in the house, our backyards butted up against each other. Her family has always done a haunted house. I've mentioned before, I think maybe, and if not, I'm mentioning now, I used to work in a haunted house when I lived in Kentucky. That's Alyssa. That's why Alyssa's connected to like all of these stories of taking people to Waverly. But anyways, back into it. On the tour, we talked about shadow people. They had us stop on the floor with the sunrooms and just stared down the hallway silently for a bit to see if any of us could see anything. We all saw the same thing. It looked like a busy hospital hallway. Shadows racing around like busy workers. We tried to debunk it as like being shadows in the tree outside, but I didn't even think that they could be. It was actual human-shaped shadows. Then they had two people from the group, one man, one woman, volunteer to walk to the end of the long hallway, turn back and walk slowly back to us with their arms out to the side like a T. So the same thing Danny described and I described earlier. This was on the floor with the sunrooms and has the big open glassless windows. So there was a little light coming in from outside, but not much because it was very cloudy, so the moon was covered. Our eyes had all adjusted to the dark enough to see around us, but it was still very dark. When the man walked back to us, this huge black mass formed around him. It was probably 7 or 8 feet tall. It encompassed him and followed him back to the group and then disappeared when he got close. Then when the woman did it, he walked back. The same thing happened, only the black mass only grew maybe 3 or 4 feet tall. Multiple people in the group gasped and said at the same time, so not prompted by the other, that they saw pigtails to the right of the woman within the black mass. The tour guide said, it happens this way almost every single tour. The men have a tall black mass around them and the women have what they believe are children following them. It was wild to witness with my own eyes.
That's crazy.
The second time I went for our combined bachelorette parties before my wedding, I distinctly saw a person peek around the doorway at our group. I also looked into a room as I was walking past it and saw somebody standing in the corner, clear as day. Oh, one more thing. Outside of room 502, they were doing the whole spiel on the woman who allegedly, again, not gonna say it,
hurt herself.
Yes. During this part of the tour, since the floor is kind of small, they usually let us wander alone for maybe 5 or 10 minutes before gathering back together and heading back downstairs. We were all walking around for maybe 3 minutes when multiple people in our group started to panic and saying they heard a growl. The entire floor started to smell rotten like boiled eggs. The tour guide made us leave and go back downstairs. I remember it being so intense that I kind of thought maybe it was staged. The smell was so strong and I kept wondering if it was like stink spray or something. I experienced the smell on the 5th floor as well. It is a very like sulfuric smell, which as a fan of Supernatural, I'm like,
yeah.
I don't like it.
No.
Now we get to Alyssa. Alyssa says that one of the times that she went, she saw a dark, tall figure run across the hall.
I don't like that.
Both of the tour guides were there right beside her, so there was no one in that direction at all. And then this was on a comment thread on my Facebook, so somebody like reminded her, like, oh, but what about room 502? And she said yes. After someone in our group heard a growl, which Laura said happened to her. I don't know if it was the same trip or whatever, but someone in the group heard a growl, and as they tried to get off the floor, she had a scratch on her hand, and her legs were burning.
I don't like that at all.
And she said she used to have a picture of the scratch on her hand, but she's not sure where it is.
I mean, we used to have pictures of us, and old cell phones just would die and you would never get your things off of them. Yeah. So I understand
there
that.
Was no cloud.
No, there were no videos either at some point.
But
I'm aging myself.
So there are our listener stories for the very first time ever. They are all so intense, and I love them. I want more.
Thank you so much for sending in your submissions and for letting us read your stories.
Katie's, Danny, Laura, was that everybody? I think so. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your stories. I hope I did them justice. I was just reading what you all sent me, but yeah, crazy experiences. And it's also very interesting to see how they all are so similar.
Similar but different if you think about it, because everybody, says, oh, I saw a shadow, but the shadow looked like this or like that. And if you think about it, the amount of death that happened there, you probably wouldn't see the same shadow twice.
Right. Which does make me wonder. I do think about a lot with like little Timmy or whatever. Like I know that we said that he may have been a real person
or a demon.
Timmy, but what if it's always a different kid? What if there's a bunch of children trapped there and they just want attention?
That's sad. And that's why they flock to the women when they do the walk.
Probably a combination of wanting their moms and the nurses.
Yeah, it's just for that familiar.
That chills.
Longing. Yeah,
that's Waverly. If you're in the Kentucky area, I highly recommend you check it out. Do one of their tours. Help support the Waverly Hills Historical Society, which is what they've created that does like the haunted house and all that to like raise the money. It's a nonprofit, and it's really interesting. Don't try to sneak up there. It's not going to be good. Stefan from Fearscape actually said that he tried to sneak up and he was sure he was going to get shot. But he tried to sneak up when he was a kid. Let me rephrase that. Like when he was growing up, teenagers doing stupid shit. But yeah, don't sneak up there. I hear it's bad times, but the tours are awesome. We went to the haunted house. I'm very picky about haunted houses. I get scared easily, but when it comes to haunted houses, because I worked in them, I'm like, no. But it was pretty decent, honestly. I remember laughing a lot, but that's probably like the fear thing,
Yeah, where you nervously giggle.
Yeah, but it was a good time. I highly recommend checking it out. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed the listener stories. Please send us more at gabbpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to have a full-length episode or several, maybe make that a recurring thing of just everyone's true crime or paranormal stories. That would be fantastic.
And they don't have to be on the subject of what we're talking about in an episode. It just worked out this way because I knew so many people who have gone to Waverly. Like I specifically decided to talk about Waverly and to ask for listener stories, if that makes sense. So you can be like, oh, I was driving down the road and there was a dead body or a ghost hitchhiking. You know what I mean? Like whatever you've experienced, whether it's on the true crime or the paranormal side or UFOs, cryptids, whatever. We just want to hear about it. It's really interesting. I get sucked into TikTok of all the people's personal experiences and shit.
Like I said before, my favorite is the Teslas who can pick up ghosts.
We talked for a good 5 minutes about that.
If you have a Tesla and you've seen ghosts, let us know. I'm just, I want more interesting things from other people because that's what we do. We tell other people's stories, and I would love to hear our listeners' stories specifically.
And yeah, because we started this podcast because it's the kind of things that interest us. And I guess, I don't know if it's like a validation thing where you want to hear that more people have also experienced these things.
It makes you feel comforted to know that you're not alone.
Right. Like, oh, you also saw that weird streak of light go across the sky and you think it was a UFO? I'm not crazy.
Hey, I got a picture of it. Want to see?
Yeah.
And if you want to share photos with us, we can always, with your permission, put it up on Instagram and Facebook and let our other listeners see what you saw firsthand.
Yes.
So with that being said, I guess that's all we have for you today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming back for our 6th episode. Is that what number we're on now?
Yeah, we are on episode 6. We're almost to double digits.
All right. Well, thanks for coming back for episode 6. Please, if you want, no pressure, hint, hint, leave us a review on your platform that you listen to us. The one that generates the most, I guess, traction from everything I've done research on is Apple, but not everyone has Apple. So if you're listening on Spotify or Stitcher or any other platform, please feel free to leave us feedback. It really does help us improve the show for you. And we just want this to be entertaining, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. So,
and make sure you follow us on social media. You can just type GABB podcast on Instagram and Facebook.
And Twitter, which I forget we even have because I suck at doing Twitter.
I'm not good at Twitter either. I used to back when it first launched, back in like 2008 or something. I'm not good at Twitter anymore. But yeah, we like to post like little funny memes, and we always update like when new episodes are coming or anything like that. So make sure you go and follow us there and subscribe and all that fun stuff
to keep up to date. So with that being said, we'll see you next time. Stay spooky.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basement, a Fearscape Media podcast. Music by Stephen Timperley. Artwork by Laura Ramsey. Find us online at fearscapemedia.com/GABB podcast, or on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at GABB podcast, or email us gabbpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.